how do you feel about AI composition?
Oh, okay.
Which is, I know, a whole nother like can of worms.
Now I feel bad because why didn't I think of that question for you? I'm the host. Like that should have been my question. Now I feel bad.
You brought the tools, but you were talking about tools. I'm
AI. Wow. It is.
You gave me that question to ask.
Okay,
all right,
nice.
We'll just say that.
I feel better. My ego hasn't been in the fields. Hello, welcome, bienvenidos, ¿cómo estamos? My name is Marcelo Treviño, and this is El Composer Podcast, a show about creating tracks that tell inspiring stories. Today's guest, American veteran composer, multi-instrumentalist, proficient in piano, guitar, saxophone, also experienced in the euphonium, is that how you say it? Euphonium, trombone, clarinet, and flute, who has scored over 45 feature films and television projects, including Jeepers Creepers 3, You Might Be the Killer, and The Perfect One. In the last 10 years, he has scored more than 70 projects across all media. He has also worked with Kevin Manthei to provide additional music for Star Trek Online expansions, Victorious Life, and Age of Discovery. He studied under composers David Newman, Jeff Rona, and orchestrator Jack Smalle, classically trained in both composition and music media at the University of Louisiana and Lafayette, and finalist for the super famous, infamous also, I guess, Westworld Scoring competition. With us here today, thank you so much, Mr. Andrew Morgan Smith. I'll put some applause in it. Yeah, how was my intro?
It was good, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for doing this. Welcome, welcome to our listeners. This is our second official English-speaking one, so I don't speak English all day, so bear with me. Andrew will too, I guess.
You wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. Sir, how's it been? I mean, crazy times. First of all, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's been, it has been crazy for sure, especially for everyone in the entertainment and film industry.
Yep.
You know, thankfully made it through 2020 without any incident.
I know.
And so far, starting at the end of 2020, things started to pick up for me again because I have some relationships with companies that managed to shoot during the whole thing. So
okay.
Back in the summer, there was specifically a company that basically got the idea in their head that said, hey, if we just like quarantine everybody in a production bubble, we'll shoot 3 movies back to back. Wow. Okay. Good idea. Yeah. So they ended up making 3 different movies, all kind of in the same world, all kind of like small, relatively small cast, only a couple locations. And so they finished that. And also they had a couple reshoots to do on another project. So through that one production company, I have done 4 movies in the last couple months because they already had shot one of them and then they shot these other ones. And they're all indie, which is, but I mean, at this point, it's just great to have something and I'm not like hustling for something else,
And one after the other. That's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of the world I've lived in a lot because I've done a lot of TV movies, I've done a lot of indie movies. And a lot of those companies, they're making their money in quantity. You know what I mean? I've done Christmas movies where you'll have, they shoot one movie and while I'm working on that movie, like while I'm scoring it, the director of that movie is also shooting the next movie. and then I roll right onto the next movie, which is, I mean, it's great to make a living doing it. It can be definitely creatively challenging.
Okay.
Especially in with this slate of these 4 movies, because they're all kind of similar in tone, right? They're all like horror, thriller, psychological thriller.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you because I went through your IMDb page and there's so many like different styles of films in there. And I wanted to get your point of view on jumping from a very serious drama to like a TV kind of family thing to a Christmas thing to like an action, or how do you manage that in terms of the approach on the score?
Personally, I kind of enjoy doing different things, right? Yeah. So like I really enjoy kind of playing in different boxes, right? Like I get a little bit stir crazy. And that's what I think I'm kind of feeling as I'm wrapping the fourth movie of this series. I'm actually starting another one. I'm not, but for someone else, but it's still a thriller.
Okay.
And it's like I start to feel like I get a little bit stir crazy in a single genre.
Okay. You mean like boxed in or?
Yeah, well, it's hard whenever you keep as all composers, right? We kind of slot into ways that we problem solve, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of run to the first answer that's in your head, especially when you have to write fast.
Yeah.
You think, oh, this is how I got around this in the first place, obviously subconsciously. So I think sometimes, oh, well, I've used, label, whatever it is. I've used a drum beat right here to kind of transition me to the next thing. But it's like, but I've done that on the last two movies.
Right.
So like clearing my head can be a little challenging
whenever
I'm doing movie after movie after movie in the same genre with kind of similar themes. All of the movies, almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess a lot of movies do this, but specifically there's 2 of the 4 on this run that have like kind of started in a happier place, in a more normal place, and then the character's mental state deteriorates, which is cool. But the thing is that like I feel like I'm pitching the same score again,
right?
Because like for both of them, I kind of liked the idea of saying, hey, what if we start even in like a really happy place, especially on one of them, where there's like almost like a quirky Wes Anderson vibe to the main actor. And I was like, well, what if I like take that and we write like a super, super upbeat thing, quirky thing. And then I just take that and I just destroy it over the whole movie. So like the drawn out pads and everything are all from that theme, and they're all permutations of this and kind of mangled versions of it. But the thing is, I also did that on the movie that I started this with, right?
Yeah.
Where it wasn't the same creative process, but it was still start with a more normal score and then turn it into something that's like destroyed and mangled.
Right. So it's like when you do a movie, you have an arc, right? You do this whole arc. Now it seems like you have like an arc of 4 movies that you have to take into consideration. Like, oh wait, I've done that already here, so I need to do something different here. So you're thinking about past and present stuff at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that also I try not to get too into my head. You know what I mean? Like we're sitting here, and especially when you're writing, you still have that movie on your head, but they're not in the series. There's no reason why some viewer may watch them. You know what I mean? There's no
it's just
reason.
For you. It's just for your doing
for my creativity.
Yeah, doing a good job for yourself.
So sometimes I have to kind of come out of myself and be like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like I just need to finish this movie.
Of course. Yeah.
But I think that the fun thing about going into so many different genres is you do get to play in different boxes, and there's something fun about doing like the sound design score, and it's nice to get out of, because I mean I'm generally an orchestral composer. That's generally my world.
Yes.
And I really love that. But at the same time, it is so time consuming.
Yeah.
Like doing a really heavy orchestral score is so time consuming, and it's so emotionally like, it's just so, it's not necessarily a simple experience, right? And as a result, like mentally it takes a lot to do that. Whereas a sound design score, I often find myself thinking like, what's the simplest version of this that I can put on the screen that is effective, right? As to how I kind of clear myself on all that, I mean, I find the more time I can do pre-production on each thing, the better.
Right.
So if it's a different genre, then it's not as hard because you're just not even in the same place. But if I'm going from horror movie to horror movie to horror movie, the more time I can kind of workshop themes and workshop sound palettes, the better off we are.
Right.
Or I know I am, because now I'm firmly in this other world.
Yeah.
And even if I have to work on movies concurrently, which sometimes happens, sometimes I'll do something where I work on one movie one day with another movie the next day, or, morning I'll work on one movie and the other day, and then after lunch I'll work on the other movie.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But like, if I have a firm grip on the themes and the sounds and the tones, then I don't run as hard of a risk of like, this sounds like that other score.
Is it? Do you use custom per movie template to achieve that? To help you achieve that? If you go into a session, it feels like you're in a different movie because the sound selection and your routing and whatever is more akin to that project.
Yeah, I definitely do that. I mean, usually I have my base template, which is my orchestral template.
Yep.
And then from there, I customize it. So every movie does have a different setup. Every movie has a different Vienna ensemble. And sometimes they don't even change. Sometimes that stuff all gets loaded in like
instances
in instances that are not. I don't remember what the right term is. That are not that will unload whenever you swap files, and they'll reload. It'll tell, because you can run it. I think they call it running headless or whatever, where it's basically if you connect to your host, it'll tell it what instruments to load.
Okay.
But I was having trouble realizing as time went on.
Coupled. Is that
coupled and decoupled? That's it. Yeah. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, though, I used to have like, okay, here's my orchestral template, and I would put the date on the VE Pro instance.
Yeah.
And then I would have to go back to that, or I'd have to reopen an old session, and I had no idea which one that was, right?
Okay. Yep.
I'd have to like try and figure out, okay, when did I originate this file, and when did that happen,
Yeah.
and
when did I save it as VP8?
Yeah, checking my dates.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully that didn't have also an overlap. So what I realized was I just saved all new instances for everything.
Okay.
So, if I'm working on movie A, I'm going to save a movie A template.
Got it. Yeah, got it.
So if I ever have to come back, I can always find movie A file.
Of course. Yeah.
And then I can open that one. Even if it's maybe not necessarily the one that I'm constantly working on, I'll at least have a point of reference.
Yeah. I duplicate the VEP one and then just name it whatever the demo or whatever I'm jumping in, and then that can get it screwed or destroyed, whatever way, and that kind of solves it. You talked about a little bit of being a orchestrator, composer, orchestration composer, because you're classically trained and you know all about that world. When you start, and I know you talked about it being time consuming, because I know you have to layer in and consider your counterpoint and the programming and your expression and stuff. How do you approach it in terms of what do you reach for first? Or, I mean, I know it depends on, if you're doing a melodic part or stuff, but do you go for woodwinds? Do you go for brass? What's your approach to filling it in or coloring it in?
Usually it's either piano or strings.
Okay.
As a person, I strings is actually like my least played instruments. But for me, I always tend to think of a lot of modern film scores as like piano if I'm trying to structurally figure out what's happening.
Yep.
Right. So that way I'm just trying to divorce myself of any kind of timbre.
Where the chords are and where the melody comes in, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm just trying to workshop, okay, does this melody even make sense?
Right.
Because sometimes it's hard to conceptualize. Depending on what library is using, it's hard to conceptualize with just full-on samples. Like you were saying, so many samples take so much work to make them sound even close to representative of what they're supposed to be. So I find that I can pick up the piano if it's on my DAW, or even if it's downstairs in the piano I have plenty of music memo recordings of me sitting at my downstairs piano with my kids screaming in the background.
Nice.
of themes, but
you can just pass that through a cassette filter and upload it as a lo-fi track.
Yeah, exactly.
With like ambient noises in the back. And
it's my Hans Zimmer sketches,
yes,
right?
Of course.
The sketches is just me at the piano with my kids screaming. And then the next thing is I will sketch with strings a lot of times because I often, for better or for worse, the way I kind of conceptualize a lot of modern film score, if it's orchestral, is like the strings tend to be the base of things, as in like the bottom foundation of everything, and then your woodwinds and your brass tend to be kind of decoration on top.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And obviously, like you said, it's not every time. There may be scores that are more foundational to brass and more foundational to woodwinds.
I really like your brass scoring. Like I have to say,
thanks.
I've listened to, of course, go to andrewmorgansmith.com. That's the This podcast brought to you by
Yeah, the plug.
AndrewMorganSmith.com. Well, there's all the social links in there, but you can listen to a bunch of tracks, and it's some really beautiful tracks, man. Congrats. It sounds really nice.
I appreciate it.
And I just really like, I've told you this before, I really like your brass scoring. It's like really nice, like the harmonies and melodies and stuff. Plus the way, you've learned how to make them sound good, I guess.
Yeah, I've spent an inordinate amount of time, so much time doing that. But I really appreciate it, man. I really do.
How about percussion? What are your go-tos? I mean, we're getting geeky in here. You're Logic, right? You're in Logic.
I'm in Logic, yeah.
Okay. What's your percussion go-to stuff recently?
I keep threatening to move to Cubase, and then I keep not wanting to go through the pain of learning.
Well, we'll talk about that because I jumped ship from DP. So.
Oh yeah,
it's a whole thing.
Most should. I'm just kidding. No, percussion. So I still am using CinePerc Core and Pro. I've had it since the first launch.
Yep.
I've never updated it. I mean, I just never upgraded because they did the consolidation thing. I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. And I just didn't buy into it. I really like the tone of that stuff. I've heard great things about the Spitfire orchestral percussion. I think that's what the library is. Although Spitfire keeps rebranding, so I don't know what their newest version of of the orchestral thing is.
It was
but
Joey Gores, and then it went to orchestral percussion, and then symphonic, and yeah. I mean, but they sound great. The CinePerc.
Oh yeah, the Cinesamples ones. Yeah, and so like those are the ones I use. I've bought other percussion samples, but orchestral stuff, it's just the Cinesample stuff is so functional.
Yeah.
And it has a good room tone. I tend to have a lot of room tone in my samples, just generally, just how I do my mock-ups. So that functions for that. I'd imagine also the Spitfire stuff would work really well for that because in air you have that huge space. So that's been the kick I'm still on for, I don't know, 7 years.
That's mentioning Spitfire is a really great transition to a good question that you've gotten in the last few months, or I guess last year. How was your experience with the contest, the Spitfire Westworld contest? Congratulations! I forget to tell you stuff because we've talked a little bit before, but congrats on that too.
Oh, of course, I appreciate it. I mean, the contest I kind of entered on a whim.
Yeah.
I think that it was just the perfect storm of, I'm sure they had this planned before the shutdown. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they were like, in 2019, hey, summer of 2020, we're going to do this. And they probably had all the deals with the show and all that kind of stuff to get clearances. But because of the shutdown and because no one was doing anything, I normally don't enter those kind of contests because I don't think it's fair.
Right.
For me to enter it, because it's like I have all these resources, I have all this experience. I normally don't enter them because I don't think it's fair.
Okay.
And so, which is ironic that it did well. But so I wasn't going to enter it. I had some friends send it to me, and some filmmaker friends like, hey, I saw this. I think you should really do this. And I was like, yeah, maybe. Maybe for fun, whatever. And then I saw another composer I follow entered it, and he scores like big TV stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, that's like if he can enter it, then I can enter it. Yeah. And also I also needed a concept, right? So I didn't want to just go in and think, oh, well, I'll just, I'm just gonna, because I kept watching. I wanted to have a concept that was different than what was going on. So to get a little gamesmanship on this, or a little strategic, I come back to this a lot when it even comes to demoing in shows or on projects, is that if everyone's stuff sounds the same, then how do you pick the best shade of blue, right? You're just not going to be able to pick the best shade of blue. You're all going to look very similar. And they all trying to, okay, well, those are all the blue ones. You know what I mean? But wow, that one fuchsia one looks really different. Yep. So as I was thinking about entering this, I was looking at people's uploads, and most of them were basically in the genre of the show, which I don't dislike the music in the show, but I was just thinking to myself, okay, these showrunners are gonna, or some poor assistant is gonna have to sit here and listen to so many entries that all sound like hybrid orchestra, Westworld stuff, which is fine, except for that they already have that score.
Yeah. How do you pronounce the composer's last name? Jawadi, I think.
Okay. I try to. I'm not very good at pronouncing names. Right. I'm not very good with names in general.
He's really good. Like, I really like his scores for stuff.
His stuff is awesome, and it also has it has some cool, unique vibes to it, and so I just was thinking, whatever I do, I want to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And in thinking about it, I was like, man, and I love. There's some classic scores that I really love. I love Back to the Future. I love. Yeah, Star Wars. Being a traditional film score nerd, there are just these scores that are hard to get away with now, right? Like, no one's going to let you score Back to the Future on a gritty TV show right now.
Yeah.
So I thought, it'd be fun to do like a Back to the Future style mock-up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So dealing with the tritone stuff and kind of dealing that style of scoring, because it has this kinetic energy that's so fun. And I posed it as a challenge to myself.
Okay.
So I basically said, look, I'm just going to do this for fun. I'm not even going to I'm not doing this to win. But I did take into consideration, I'm going to do something that's different than what everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to, I'm doing something different than everyone else. And I'm also going to use it as a challenge to myself to make the best mock-up version of this that I can.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I spent the next couple days writing on this thing. And there was something I did that I think, I don't think I would have won, but I think in the spirit of the competition, I think what they were looking for was a change from one style to another style.
Yeah.
And I actually fought myself on okay, should I start in a more dark synth world and then turn into this? And I didn't do it. I decided not to. I think, frankly, it was a mistake in my strategy, but I mean, it went well, they getting a runner-up position on it. I mean, out of 11,000 entries, out of the top 6 out of 11,000 seems like a pretty good shot.
It doesn't seem. It is. It is a great shot, and I really like the track. It sounds really cool and fun.
I appreciate it.
It sounds fun, which is something you enjoy it when you see it. Like you're really It's jumping.
Well, I mean, that was the thing about David who won.
Yeah.
His 8-bit rendition, as much as people want to bag on it, I laughed out loud when I watched it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can only imagine, the assistant watching through all these different videos, and then that one comes up and they just laugh out loud and they're like, all right, well, I have to put this one in.
Yeah, it's fun.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fun. That's what we're here to do. We're here to entertain.
Yeah.
A
funny thing was that happened around the competition was that I was actually catching up on Westworld. I never watched it when it came out, and we were starting to see shows. And a friend of mine, I'm like, "Did you watch Game of Thrones?" And I'm like, "I never got around to it." So I started from scratch, and I got a lot of heat from my friends. What, are you kidding me? Are you starting now? This ended a few years ago, and you're just seeing the first season. So I got through that, and I enjoyed it, and I think it had great music also. And then I jumped into Westworld because I knew it was a kind of similar big show that I missed when it came out, and I missed the hype and stuff. And I was actually maybe 10 episodes before the scene that was that submitted to everyone to score.
Okay.
So it kind of was a spoiler, and I'm like, who are these characters in the future?
Yeah.
I'm still, in the old west I was in a different era. I think it was like old Japan or something. And then when I got to that scene, I'm like, oh, this is the scene that everybody's scoring. And I was telling my wife, look. And she's like, oh, of course. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, because I've seen posts of everyone just submitting their stuff.
Yeah.
And it was cool to kind of merge those two timelines of people scoring the scene and then me getting to the scene and watching the actual scene. And the scene had this the thing about it about the character changing his movie dramas in his head. He was like going through all this like I think it was injected with something, and he went from one movie genre to another, and that was a fun thing to score if you're working on a show. Like, oh, now he's jumping into like a old Western or how do you call it? The noir.
Yeah. Film noir stuff.
Noir stuff, and so it was fun to see all that stuff.
Yeah, and I have a confession to make as well. I haven't watched Game of Thrones or Westworld.
Nice,
but which made this scene very weird to score because I didn't understand that until after, like, I had kind of started doing the first pass on it.
Yeah.
Whenever I started to see some people change, I was like, oh, maybe he's actually like changed. Like, I didn't know what was happening.
Right.
So it made that a little bit interesting at the top, but.
It worked out.
I just have this thing where people tell me something's good. I don't want your opinion. I want to have my own opinion.
Right.
So it's hard for me to watch something.
Well, congrats on that. Did you get to any prize? What did they send you?
Yeah, I got a. They sent me the whole symphonic. What was it? The symphonic. Whatever their like large orchestral.
Oh, the symphonic orchestral.
Yeah, their large orchestral libraries.
Nice.
Honestly, I was hoping I would get their percussion library, but I didn't get that one.
Speaking of,
the one that I was like, I might actually want that one. Yeah. Not that I dislike these; it's just funny. And then also we got a signed record of the score from. So I think it's signed by the two creators, which their names are now escaping me.
No worries.
Of the show. And also that was the big deal also was the other reason why I decided to do this was because the judges of the final however many finalists they picked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously they didn't sit down, like these guys didn't sit down and listen to 11,000 entries, but like J.J. Abrams and the two creators of the show, like the two main executive producers, were the final, and I think also the composer were the final say on who won.
Yeah, it's amazing,
right? So part of this was also that I was like, oh well, I could say my music has been heard by J.J. Abrams,
of course,
but has. Close doesn't count in the film industry.
Even if you're with them working for 10 years, suddenly they just jump to another composer.
Yeah,
and that's fine. I mean,
yeah,
it's okay. We're not working with Steven Spielberg, who always keeps his composer when he's available.
Yeah, exactly. John Williams won't be around forever, unfortunately.
Well, I'm dreading the day we have to go online and just post about that. Yeah,
I know. He's 89 now, so only so much longer.
That got dark suddenly. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry about the real world coming at you fast.
We went from winning a contest to like really dark. We won't have him around. Speaking of, there's no good transition there. What am I gonna do? We got really dark really fast. How's dadlife? #dadlife composer life for you? I know you recently had a new member in the family.
Thanks.
The good question they ask us is the balance between being a dad, being a family man, and writing, composing. How's that been for you?
It's been. I mean, I feel like I've managed to do an okay job of finding a balance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like it's not so much. I guess it's still a balancing act, but to some extent, a lot of it. I mean, I can't take all the credit myself. My wife is a hugely important part of that process.
Of course. Yeah.
My wife is dealing with them whenever they get home from school and taking care of all that. So that's a big part of it, right? Because we all kind of understand that as composers, there are times when you're kind of on call, and you'll be working late or you'll be working overtime, basically. And then there's other times when you're not doing as much, and maybe you have just normal business hours, or you can take the day off. You know.
Yeah.
And I think the balancing act for me, although I have young kids, so they're demanding, but they're demanding in different ways, right? They're not demanding in necessarily events and stuff we have to go to, but they're demanding in the sense that they just need time.
Yep.
I'm at home, so like my office is at home, which has been at home for about 4 years now. And I find just trying to keep office hours as best I can. So I get into the office around 8:30 to 9, and then I work until probably 4 to 5, and then I finish, and I try to be done for the day.
Do you eat something?
Pardon me?
Do you eat something at some point?
Yeah, I eat lunch. But my point being is I try to be kind of structured with my time. And the other thing that I've found valuable is I've started hiring a music editor about a couple years ago. I started working with a music editor, whereas before, for whatever reason, I just wanted to, I had this weird guilt about like, if I don't write every single note of this score.
I know. Yeah. That a lot of people that I know have that.
Yeah.
I mean, not to diminish your experience.
No, 100%. I mean, it's one of the things I tell people when I talk to them about, dealing with deadlines is hard.
Of course.
And like, also, when you're writing a 50-minute score, 60-minute score, maybe 20 to 30 minutes of that is original music, as in like completely whole new thing based on themes. Everything else, even if I was writing it all new, is going to be derivative of whatever that other stuff was.
Right.
So the difference is, well, am I writing it or someone else writing it, or is someone creating it out of my stems that I've sent them?
Mm-hmm.
So I think working smarter and not harder has been kind of my mantra for the last 3 or 4 years.
Nice.
Because I got to a point where I had kind of like I had a panic attack, to the point where I was working on like 3 movies at once. I had a newborn baby.
Yeah.
I guess this could be like almost 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And I just had this moment where like my health I wasn't like getting sick, but I just felt run down.
Yeah.
And
Low energy.
What am I doing? Yeah, what am I doing? Like, I'm writing music at the time. I was writing music for a shark movie, not making E.T. Like, what am I doing to myself?
Yeah.
And I think kind of checking myself on that, bringing in help when you need it, even though obviously I'd rather be the person that writes everything. I'd rather do that, but it's just not how our industry functions.
Right. There's no time for some of the stuff that we need to do.
Yeah. I mean, what's more important, me spending time with my kid at 2 years old, spending the time getting to sleep, or is it more important that I write this 10-second transition track?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
makes sense.
That I've already written 30 times.
Yep.
And the answer is pretty easy to me.
Yeah, of course. How do you pick someone for your team? That's a good question for composers who want to expand their team. How do you go about getting to that 2-person team?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is recommendations. So like that's been kind of the people I'm working with right now. The people I've had the most success with are either people I've had a previous relationship with and I know that they can do the job.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's just through just knowing somebody and knowing their work, or personal recommendation of somebody who's done the job through somebody I trust, which is like the entire film industry, right? It's like, oh, I know a person who's done whatever.
I've got a guy.
Why don't you give him a call? Yeah, I got a guy, Yeah. And like that's how I've found the most success in that. I occasionally find somebody else, but it really unfortunately on these jobs there's just not a lot of on-the-job training.
Right. You have to be you have to know what you're going into. Especially
whenever you're writing, some movies I'll be writing a total in a month of like 100+ minutes of music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I don't have time to bring in a new assistant and be like, all right, cool. So now you open up Logic.
Yeah, this is where you click on the folder for.
Yeah.
It's tough, yeah. And that's super. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's really time consuming, and you want to be a nice person to whoever's there. But I think there has to be kind of a level of, oh, I already can get to that. I can already help you with these things, right?
Well, and you might deal with this as well. I don't live in Los Angeles, and as a result, it actually is harder, right? Because I'm not by a plethora of people who would just walk in the door and be competent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not for any fault of their own. It's just not the industry that's here. Yeah. So as a result, anytime I bring someone on board, whether it's an assistant, an intern, there's a good deal of time that has to be spent. Yeah. Like, okay, so now we're going to do file management.
Right, of course.
There's
it's
not
tough.
many people doing that, you know.
I've-
Do you find that?
I've tried. I still have to try harder to expand the team because I'm also on that. I feel like I have to mix, program, orchestrate, and write everything and just deliver everything. And I worked as an assistant composer for a composer here in Vancouver for 4 years on a great animated show for Disney, and that was like a master program for me in that kind of very specific of writing for a show. But it's tough to get somebody, and then because you have your own way of doing things also.
Yeah.
Like I had to adapt to this composer's Brian Carson's style, and also his approach and the AW and everything. You have to just kind of jump in there. But I could put files together and edit stuff, so I wasn't going in from zero. And I'm kind of afraid of jumping and having an editor or an assistant. I've worked with 2 or 3 people, but not on a consistent basis for like a long period of time. But I think a music editor would be the first thing I would really try to go for.
That's what I was going to suggest as well. The music editor, especially if you get a good one, and the best music editors I've had, and I've not worked with a plethora of them. I've worked with 3, and I've worked with a few other people who were like kind of trying to do it.
Yep.
The best music editors I've had generally are composers.
Right.
And
they know what's going on.
They know what's going on. They know how to time things out. They know how to really do other stuff. Now, I'm sure there's other music editors who are not composers who are amazing.
Yep.
I have just never worked with them.
Right.
But I think music editor also, because the other issue I ran into, and I still run into when I hire additional music people, is that you're not running through your system, right? So unless you're going to do something to marry all the sounds, whether that's everyone works from the same template with the same samples, everyone's working with but also just sonically it sounds different. Like I can look back on movies that I had additional music people on, and it just sticks out to me. Now, the directors have never made a comment about it. You know what I mean? I've never had a director be like, "Oh, well, this sounds reverb on this part sounds different." But
what's going on with the piccolo on this cue?
Yeah, but to me, I listened to that and I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" Like that doesn't if I got that, I'd be like, "What is this?"
Yeah,
this is
this is something else that you're delivering. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is subverted with a music editor, right? Like we don't deal because they're dealing with all of your
stuff,
all your stems. So it takes a little more work for you because you need to be set up to be doing stemming. You know what I mean? So I now have like a native built-in setup that allows me to just print stems in Logic. So there's a little more prep work on that stuff, but at the end of the day, at least the stuff sounds similar, right? Yeah. You're not getting like, oh, well, you're working with Cinebrass and that person's working with, with Spitfire, and the timbres sound completely different. Unless you're going to be working with an audio engineer or you're going to be recording it, right? If you're going to record it, then everything's kind of going through the same stuff anyway.
Yeah.
But if the way most, I think, if I'm going to venture I'm going to say a pretty bold statement, most of the industry works, where we're having to be the composer, the engineer,
programmer,
everything. Programmer. Whenever you hire someone else, they are going to send their tone, their sound.
Yes. Also, something that really helps is administrative stuff. Is that how you said administrative?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the administration for like cue sheets and spotting notes and emails, exporting stuff, stems.
I've never had a music editor that I actually was having do that stuff.
Okay.
Just because it's never been a full-on normal union music editor gig.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that would be amazing for me to do that. But once again, like for me, their value is basically to do that, to basically just come in and make sure that, I need to throw together another cue at this spot,
Yeah, put something together, and then we'll see what it needs. What else it needs.
I mean, there was even I'm not going to say what movie, but there
Zombie
was a movie
Shark.
No. There was a movie where it was the first time I was working with this new music editor, and I just was like, man, I'm just going to throw a crazy scene at you. And I said, no hard feelings if you can't do it. Like, I get it. Like, I don't know if I'd be able to music edit this scene because it's a lot of hit points. It's a lot of action stuff, just all around difficult. Right. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I think all the themes are there, and I think all the content is there. It would just be very challenging. And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. So he does his thing. It's great, right? He loves it. Like it worked really well. It just really, really worked. And I didn't have to take on an action scene, which was really nice on an action heavy movie. Yeah. I'm in the final mix of the movie with the director, and we go through that scene. He's like, man, that's my favorite cue in the movie. And I was like, man. But he did an awesome job.
Did it hit you in the feels in the composer ego feels?
All the feels. Look, the guy wants to work with me again, so no big deal. But at the end of the day,
he did a great job then.
He did an awesome job. And also, once again, indistinguishable from my other stuff.
Of course.
Because it is still the same stuff. It's just, molded and moved around.
Yeah, he nailed it. There's hopefully I get to do more episodes for the show I'm working on, blah, blah, blah. But I have three seasons of each, 2 seasons of 12, 13 episodes each and one big movie. I think there's like thousands of just like stems in there of just stuff. Yeah. And if you can't solve a cue with that amount of stuff, it's then you're not a good at music editor, I think.
Yeah. I would say so. Unless it's just a completely new.
Yeah. If we're in the same realm and there's so much stuff and which I'm excited about. That's kind of my thought around, oh man, I've done so many cues and I have so much material in there that it would be great to get somebody who would give it another approach and be like, oh, I grabbed this from you from episode 3 and season 2 and then I added this from season 1 and then you go into this action thing and then you can put something above this, and I'm really excited about that because that'll also go into the workflow, make it faster.
Well, that's 100%. I've heard stories of TV composers because you have to turn around crazy.
Yeah, it's
crazy deadline,
20 something minutes in like a week or something.
Yeah, so it's like the ideal, right? Like the ideal situation. I know that always I've heard like the first and second seasons, especially the first season, is just astronomically hard because you're just churning and churning and churning
everything,
but
from zero, from scratch.
Yeah, from zero.
Yeah, because it's the first time you get like a dialogue scene. It's the first time you get a dialogue with an emotional. It's the first time that you get an action thing. It's the first time you get an epic thing. And you have to go in from zero, from scratch every time. Those first 2 seasons, I guess.
But like I've heard stories of composers that I know who are doing shows that are like, a 20-minute episode, I'm scoring 4 to 5 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, because there's a new character in there that needs to be addressed or something.
Yeah, or you're just grabbing a couple things. But that's the ideal, right? The ideal is that you're taking on the new elements. You're taking on the elements that are new and or just the elements that maybe need something a little more custom, right? So maybe the most poignant moment or the most important moments. But like you're not inventing the wheel every time, and that's the need.
And the something to think about is that those other cues that get built on stuff that you have already or by a music editor don't have less of a craft or have left of there's what's the right word to say this? There's the same care goes into solving that scene emotionally and in terms of sync and in terms of story arc and stuff as other things. But just because it's built with elements or by somebody else doesn't mean that there's no inclination to have it be as important as every other cue in the show. That's kind of a misconception of, you just put something on there. No, we put whatever was needed. It could have been the same. It could have been me playing that pad, but we found it and it worked because the emotional theme that I grabbed from. So what I'm trying to say is that those cues also require and get the attention that, ideally, right? Require and get the attention that they need as the from scratch ones.
Well, I think that you're touching on an important thing that I know I felt for years, which is just because you are not doing necessarily what you would want in a classical sense or like in an album,
right?
That for some reason it's lesser.
Okay.
Right? Like, because that's always, and I mean, there's always that musician part of my brain that's like, but this is boring.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Of
Like,
course. Yeah.
But if it works, it works.
Yeah, it works. But why did I do so little work? I feel like I should be doing more with this.
I should return your money.
Yeah, I should. But yeah, it's and it just saves time, and it's your notes, it's your approach, it's your sounds. It's just block building. But it's as
also
creative as writing from scratch, I guess.
Well, also the other thing that I think as composers we're prone to do is get in our own way.
Yeah.
Right. So I know a lot of composers, and I had a teacher who at one point I brought up to him that there was I knew a lot of composers who were interested in being film composers from Juilliard. This is not a knock against anyone at Juilliard, but I was like, man, I just feel out of place. You know, I'm just this guy from Louisiana, and these people have like savant level stuff going on. Mm-hmm. And he was like,
intimidating.
Well, yeah, it's intimidating. And he just basically said, look, Juilliard composers aren't film composers. And obviously there are film composers who are from Juilliard who are very good. Yeah. I think what he meant is that there's a certain amount of getting, like, the music is not the most important thing in your film,
right,
or in your TV show. Mm-hmm. And I have.
What do you mean?
What
do you mean? What?
What? No, I think that is something that the sooner you realize that as a composer, the better off you are. Yep. Because there will always be cues that you like that get butchered. There's always going to be, like, you are part of a collaborative process. And if the director and producer think that it's the wrong answer, then it's the wrong answer, even if you think it's the right answer.
Right. Yep.
And if you're in the way, if you're in your own way because you're like, oh, I really love how this track does whatever. I really love how, this Moog sits in the mix.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but that noise is super distracting whenever the actor's voice is almost in the same range.
Yeah.
You're part of a bigger product that is not, it's very easy to lose sight of if you're too much, if you're doing too much.
Right.
And
bringing in stuff that's been approved, that is liked, and coloring in scenes with that. Your stems, for example, by a music editor, gets the job done, and everybody gets really happy about it. So
yeah, and you maintain your wife and your kids, and they don't all hate you.
And everybody wants to hire you again, and then
I mean, as much as I understand the inclination, because for a long time I didn't want to use loops, like I didn't want to use like percussion loops and stuff, and then I just realized, like, why am I killing myself? Like, I don't go downstairs and be like, man, why didn't I bake this bread that I'm about to eat on this sandwich?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I bought this bread from the store and now I'm about to eat it.
Yeah. This is a great table, but I feel bad because I didn't build it. Yeah.
Because I didn't build the table.
Yeah.
For that matter, I wish I could have assembled my computer and built all the parts from scratch.
Which some composers do. And
I mean, but in the sense that, like,
of course,
like, I'm not, if I use a sample of a violin, I'm not it's like, you're not, that instrument sounds like that because that's what it is. And it's just, I started to look at things more as tools rather than like, oh, well, I'm not a real composer if I do X, Y, Z, or if I use this or I don't use this. And I think that that's one of the problems as a person who has a composition degree that I mentally face, is thinking, although I didn't have like a very unorthodox way of going about getting my degrees, but
that's another story for another.
Yeah, it's another story for another time. Yeah. But that's kind of, and I'm sure I've talked to other composers who didn't get any composition degrees, and they have imposter syndrome because, like, well, I didn't even study any of this, and I don't know how to do any of this.
Right. There's always something there.
Yeah, there's always going to be something that you're fighting mentally, but man, just don't beat yourself up for that stuff. If it works, it works. That's kind of the beginning and end of that.
I think tools are evolving super fast, and there's going to be a decrease with new generations in that regard a little bit, I guess, with tools, because we can see them as something that we didn't have before. But new composers eventually will be like, oh yeah, these are the tools, and this is how you get to a sound in this regard. And it's amazing to be able to see that transition in the last 10 years. And there's this whole mental thing involved in how we approach writing something. Even the tools we use, we're like, well, is this? I just hit one note and it works really good. Should I add something else, or should I take?
Yeah.
Am I cheating? Like this is a really cool pad, and then your director's like, I want a little bit less. Oh, great!
Yeah.
Great.
I love everything before that bell noise.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's one note.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's the note that I put in there so I didn't feel like I wasn't doing like stuff.
It felt like I was doing my job.
Yeah. Well,
I'm really.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious about the tool conversation. How do you feel about AI composition?
Oh, okay.
Which is, I know, a whole nother like can of worms.
Now I feel bad because why didn't I think of that question for you? I'm the host. Like that should have been my question. Now I feel bad.
You brought the tools, but you were talking about tools. I'm
AI. Wow. It is.
You gave me that question to ask.
Okay,
all right,
nice.
We'll just say that.
I feel better. My ego hasn't been in the fields. I still think we're going to be using that as if you pull up a string patch and it gives you that blush Abbey Road sound.
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't before. So my take on that would be, hopefully, I mean, if AI is on our side, because there's this whole they can destroy us and be composers plus run the world part.
It's the Skynet version of composers.
Of course. Yeah. That they wipe out all our networks and all our VPs, and just there's this bug that destroys all our network connections to our other computers, and all these podcasts get erased by them.
Of course.
So there's no information out there. I just saw Age of Ultron, so I'm kind of in that mindset.
But you're just like, what if it was a composer? What if it's just like Beethoven? He comes out wearing a wig, the entire thing,
and he destroys all of us, but everybody else is fine. Well, I guess it should be really cool if it's a tool that you could just like set up and add some tags, put some plugins into the chain, maybe some custom design sounds, and maybe a harmonic progression, input some sync points in there, and be like, give me an option. That would be like sending something to a music editor and him sending you something back, and then you can be like, you know what, this is nice, but then at this point, we'll just drop these 3 stems, and then you can write a little bit of melody inside of that. So if it's a practical tool that gets you somewhere, it doesn't take away from, and you can manipulate it in terms of it being a creative partner instead of like overriding the way you approach creating, then I mean I guess that's a nice neighbor way of looking at it. The not aggressive. He's going to take all of our jobs away. Part of it, like using it as a tool, I guess. I don't know.
I generally agree. I don't know if anyone. I guess like I worry about composers becoming editors. Like that's something that like that's already an annoying part of the job, that you have to do so much editing with sample data and all that kind of stuff. So that's my biggest, at least for me personally. I'm not worried about a computer taking away my job.
Okay.
Like the interpersonal relationship, I think, is just too much to overcome that.
Right.
You know,
the creative part of
the creative part of it, and like just the handshake version of that, I think is going to be difficult to overcome. And I would also be very curious, because as far as I'm like stumbling over this, but I think that your AI is going to be derivative of whatever already has happened, right? I don't know how it's going to function with creating an entirely new idea. Like if you wanted to have your own sound.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm following now.
Yeah, it'd be one thing to say, hey, I want corporate library music, right? I think that I think it's going to take away those kind of jobs.
Okay.
Because anything that can just be churned out in an hour by a first-time musician, I think it's going to be a problem for them, or for that job group, right?
Okay.
Which, look, I have library music out there, so it's not like I would be completely unaffected. And I think also for things like I've seen the AI comp stuff where it's like loops, where it's like loops, and you can like shape like an editor could import a video and shape hit points and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But it still seems like it's only for like very corporate things, right? Very commercial level. Like, here's our, I don't know, our corporate ad.
Yeah.
And it finishes with some sound. You know what I mean?
For a conference or something, they're putting together a 10-minute video.
Yeah.
Of an update on financial something.
Yeah.
And they need a track that they don't, fits well.
I don't think it becomes the defining sound of like Star Wars or The Dark Knight or something. I think that those things are a bit more like, how can me taking something like you're saying, like maybe you take a theme that you work out with an AI, which, I guess is kind of questionable anyway. And then you change it to be your own and you add stuff to it so it feels like your own thing. I think that the concern is kind of overblown.
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm getting at,
I know that there's stuff that feels like it'd be really cool to implement in terms of AI. I don't know if you can do this already, but like imagine you're writing and you bus everything to the AI and including the dialogue track. And then you specify that you need dropouts on your melody stems or your percussion high stems whenever this dialogue comes in, or it gates whatever. And then so you're writing a cue and then you listen to it with the plugin AI on that's called dialogue AI or something. And then you see how your cue goes around and respects spaces and dialogues and be like maybe up and down the threshold of that and be like, that kind of thing. That kind of AI implementation, and I guess we're seeing that a little bit with the iZotope stuff, where you play back something for its engine, and it goes, okay, you're using these type of frequencies, and most of my algorithms say that you could use this type of gate or this type of compression.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a little bit of that, and I think that could be really functional for us.
Yeah.
But I do think that, plus there's so much music out there that the AI could just pull up a corporate track from thousands and thousands of library tracks out there and edit it on the fly or something.
Well, I think obviously the reason why I'm not worried about my job as of right now being taken away by AI isn't because the computer couldn't do that kind of job, but it's because like what I bring to the table is unique. And I think that what's going to like that's why I said like the library stuff is tough because it's not really unique, right? Like whenever, and this is ideally, I think what we all want is that when a production company or a composer or an ad agency, or not a composer, but whoever comes to you and wants to hire you, they're hiring you because they feel like you bring something unique to the table,
right?
That they don't just get by going to a library, because they could go to a library and license, like you're saying, like generic track number 5. And now they have, the hit for their splash screen.
Yeah, there's so much artistic input in there that's tough to. I mean, we can look back at this in 30 years and be like, oh, that bot is really,
how
really
naive.
Good. Yeah, he's really good at writing. He's like super creative, like how he solved that emotional key at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think we're a little bit off from that creative part being wiped off the earth completely.
Oh yeah.
Well,
sure.
This is amazing. Tell me a little bit of just so we can wrap up, and I won't take much of your time. How's everything been with working with Kevin Manthei?
Oh, it's been good, man. I mean, Kevin and I are friends, and I've enjoyed working with him on the stuff he's, I've had the pleasure being brought on to do with him.
Yeah.
He knew I was a big Star Trek fan, which I think is what so there was a little bit of a quid pro quo, right?
Yeah.
So Kevin, I was working on a movie called Santa Jaws.
Okay.
And
it's amazing. It's an amazing title. I mean,
yeah. And I mean, an even more amazing movie. Okay. I mean, let's be real. Just, you want to see a shark with a Santa Claus hat swimming around, and you want to hear Up on the Rooftop in a minor key as the shark's theme, then
that's amazing.
I have a movie for you to watch.
If that's what you're looking for,
yeah.
There it is.
It's on Amazon Prime, so enjoy.
Okay.
So I was writing on that movie, and it was one of those times I was just kind of underwater. I was dealing with, I I want to say I was dealing with moving too. I think we had a baby on the way. I had like 2 movies on deck, and then we were moving. So it's dealing with all these different life stresses, and I just needed an additional music writer. And Kevin usually works on animation stuff.
Yeah.
Like he's done Ben 10, he's done all these Spider-Man shows, like he's done a ton of stuff, and he's really talented. And he said, look, he's like, I would love to score something that's not animated, just to do something different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so the exchange was like, he brought me on to do some Star Trek stuff because he knew I like Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wrote some additional music on Santa Jaws.
Nice. Okay.
So that was kind of the exchange, which it was fun. I mean, it was definitely, that movie is zany and everything. So, Kevin's style worked in it,
mm-hmm.
you know, because he has definitely like a very different style to the other stuff I was writing,
mm-hmm.
but the stuff he did worked on the scenes that he did.
Nice.
Another way that I often work with additional music composers, if I think they have a very specific sound like Kevin's or a few other movies, a lot of times what I'll do is I will add in, not add in, but I'll specifically say, okay, they're going to deal with this theme, right? They'll deal with this character's theme. So that way, every time that idea or theme comes back, they're all theirs. So that way, sonically, we're always in that world with that character.
Mm-hmm.
But so that
makes sense.
That was with what I did with Kevin on that. And we've done a few other things here and there. We had collaborated on making some samples, and that was pretty fun and a good creative outlet, especially until the pandemic hit, and then
and then everything got, you know, like confusing and weird and strange.
Yeah,
and we all worried about what was going to happen to us, and it's happening to us. But we've stuck through. I guess we're in there. We're fighting through.
We are here.
Well. This is amazing. Thank you so much. I also want to tell our listeners thank you for stopping by and checking us out and listening to all of our ramblings. AndrewMorganSmith.com. There's so much music up there, man. That's really, really cool that you could upload all that stuff. Love the page. Also, tell me a little bit about the YouTube channel. I think those videos are super helpful. They're super quick. I love the tone. It's nice. It's so refreshing, and I hope you keep doing so much more of them. I mean, so many more of them.
Yeah. So I appreciate it, man. I started a YouTube channel a couple years ago, mostly on the whim of I just kept getting asked similar questions over and over again by directors or by composers, and especially with composers, I was asked questions, but with directors, I encountered the same problem over and over again, or the same fears.
Okay.
So I had kind of looked around, and I didn't really see a prominent channel. I mean, mine's not that prominent, but the prominent channel dealing with those ideas.
Okay.
So I decided to start making videos, and then when the pandemic hit, we were all sitting around with nothing but time. So I started to make more. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, since work has picked back up, I've been kind of slammed. So I haven't even had time to actually go back and start, because I always try to outline everything and have a structure so that way I stay on target. I don't have 2 hours of video to edit.
Plus you have to edit,
yeah. So and in fact, some of the videos I actually have shot. I've shot 2 more videos, but one of them I know I can't use because now my opinion's changed on it since the pandemic hit.
Okay.
But anyway, so that's kind of, if you're curious about the composing world and you're a composer or director, I try to do longer form stuff as well as short form tip stuff, and just, do interesting stuff on there, answer questions. And hopefully once I've thankfully been busy, so I'm not going to complain about being busy.
No, of course.
But hopefully once that kind of stuff settles down, I'll be able to make a couple more, do more planning and shooting of videos.
Nice. Well, you can find the link to that on AndrewMorganSmith.com. I think you have a social up on top on the right side.
Yeah.
You have social links, and you have Instagram and I think Twitter. Are you also on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Clubhouse. I'm on...
Oh, Clubhouse. How's that?
Yeah. It's pretty good, man. I mean, I think I've been in great conversations and great rooms, and I've been in ones that are lacking.
Yeah. Okay.
But overall, I think I'm kind of excited about that platform.
Okay.
Being much more seems much more ideas exchange based versus visual based, right? All of our other socials are so visually stimulating. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do a lot of visual content for that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, turn out that stuff. How does Clubhouse work? Can you send me an invitation? Am I cool enough?
I can send you an invitation. Well, do you have an iPhone? That's the question.
I have an iPad.
I think you can do it on iPad. You have to have an iPhone. As of right now, you have to have iOS. It's the only thing it works on.
Yep.
And
I changed from an iPhone to that's a whole other podcast episode, but I changed from an iPhone to a Pixel 5 a few months ago, just because I've been on iPhone forever. And I can say I'm enjoying the Google ecosystem.
I'm so sorry. But basically, I think it'll open up to Android users, just not yet, right? So it's by invite only, and you can kind of go into rooms, and it's almost like having live panels, which is cool. So it's almost like if you were to go to a Comic-Con panel or a convention panel, and anyone can start a room. And so if we were doing this on Clubhouse, we could have this conversation, and then people could listen. And then if they have a question, they raise their hand. So you like hit a button and it notifies the moderator, and they can choose to bring you up or not. And you can ask your question, and then you can specifically respond to people, right? Which is really cool. And then you can send that person back to the audience, or they can stay up on stage if they have something to contribute. So it has a lot of potential for that kind of stuff, like stuff that's frankly hard during the pandemic, right? Like you can't go to conferences, you can't do parties, you can't do networking that well. But in this scenario, it feels a lot more like you're hanging out at a party or going to a Q&A than any other app I've been on. So
we'll do that.
I'm curious.
We'll set up a room for El Luchador Audio, and we'll have chats with people. So they tell us about how they're using all their instruments and stuff. Thanks for the tip.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, send me an invitation because I want to feel cool. I want to feel part of
invite only.
I want to be part of that crowd. I don't want to be left out. Well, sir, it's really amazing to talk to you, and there's so much information here that's so valuable to everyone who's listening, I'm sure. Send us your questions, of course. What's coming up for you that you can talk about? Stuff I know, some stuff you can't talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wrapping up these movies. I'm starting another one. I'm hoping that we'll have word about the sales on those things, since there's such a content drought. Yeah. You know, I'm hoping that they'll have an easier time selling. I'm just also wrapping up my 4th national ad that I've done this year.
Nice.
Which I was really hoping. There's one that I have an NDA, so I can't say what it's for. But I just they were supposed to launch March 1st, and then I just got notified yesterday it's pushed indefinitely. So we don't know when. We don't know when it's getting
Everything's
launched.
Taking off really slowly this year, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I have some fun campaigns I've been working on, and these movies, which I'm really excited about. But you know, nothing is set in stone as of yet, because no one's sold it yet.
We don't know if there's stone to set stuff on anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's so weird. Well, sir, it's been such a great time talking to you. Thank you so much for doing this, being part of this new podcast, and hopefully we'll get to jump around a second round with you later on. Of course, when everything comes out, I'm going to send you all our instruments so you can tell me what you think.
Well, thank you so much,
and you can put them in there. Just send me a demo or something. I don't know, because I love how you write. Well, thank you so much, sir. Everybody check out andrewmorgansmith.com for all the links. They want to ask. I'm already sending you people who ask you stuff. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Always.
Thank you, everybody, and catch us on the next episode of El Composer podcast for El Luchador Audio. This is some background music coming in right here.
It's actually just you singing the background music.
That would be great to have a just a me
one
going.
version. One version is you just singing it out, doing the studio fade on it.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much, sir, and goodbye. Have a good afternoon, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thanks so much for having me.
That was a really cool talk. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing all of this info with us. I can't wait for you guys to listen to our next episode. I've been wanting to share this episode with you guys for a long time. We have none other than The Warning on our next episode here on El Composer podcast. So much happening with The Warning. They talk about how they worked on their new album. They have a new single right now called Choke. Go check it out on all platforms. And they just announced a really, really cool featured collaboration on a very important project called the Metallica Blacklist, with so many amazing artists featuring their unique interpretations of a Black album. That's amazing. So you won't want to miss that episode next Wednesday, The Warning. And as always, my name is Marcelo Trevino, and this was El Composer Podcast. Gracias. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for creating, listening to, and or supporting music creators. Of course, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.